It is now 52 minutes past the hour. Time for the severe weather update. Storm specialist Carl Parker is standing by at the expert desk to give us the very latest. Another day of violent storms we're expecting, Carl.
Yeah, Viv, we are very concerned once again about the possibility of tornadoes and damaging wind and large hail. And let's begin with the Torcon values for the Mid-South and the Deep South. Jackson, Mississippi, a 7 out of 10. That is a 70% chance of a tornado in a 50-mile radius. 6 out of 10, Huntsville, Alabama. Notice the timing there. This is from the afternoon and through the evening. Then Nashville, 12 p.m. to 8 p.m., a 5 out of 10. Then that severe threat is going to continue right into tonight. And take a look at some additional Torcon values. A 6 out of 10 in Birmingham. That is 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. And that, of course, can be very dangerous when storms strike in the middle of the night. Hopefully you have a way to be notified. In Atlanta, it's going to be 1 a.m. to 8 a.m. Could be a very noisy start to the day. And Baton Rouge, 6 p.m. to 1 a.m., Torcon value of 5. So let's talk about what's happening right now. And fortunately, there's not a whole lot of severe at the time. We do expect to see a lot more activity this afternoon. And I want to show you where there's been some very heavy rain here. Flash flood warning now in effect just south of Nashville. That's Maury and Williamson counties going until 1:30 in the afternoon. Then to the west of that, another flash flood warning for Hickman, Lewis, and Perry counties going until 12:15. And this is a look at the rainfall that has occurred in the last 12 hours, 3 to 4 inches from Nashville and on westward and along I-40. We are getting reports of some street flooding now, so please be very careful as you get out and about. Here's a visible satellite picture. Notice, if you will, the clouds moving along very quickly once again from Texas out into the lower Mississippi Valley. That's that very strong mid-level wind at about 10,000 feet, 70 to 80 miles per hour. And when you have that strong mid-level wind over top of a warm and humid low-level atmosphere, that can lead to long-lasting storms, very organized storms that rotate and produce tornadoes. And that really is the worry today. So here is the thunderstorm forecast. And the greatest threat for tornadoes is going to be here across parts of the Mid-South, Mississippi into Tennessee, parts of Louisiana. That is for this afternoon. And here is the high-resolution model forecast. I want you to notice how there are these individual cells. Those are the ones that are really dangerous. Discrete cells, we call them, supercell thunderstorms that pop up in that high-resolution model there in parts of Mississippi and northern Alabama. Notice the timing. That's 6 o'clock this afternoon. And then we see more of this development even into the overnight hours, and those storms then making their way across central Alabama very late tonight and into tomorrow morning. So a severe threat again tomorrow across a lot of the same areas, but also farther eastward, and then that severe threat into the Carolinas and Georgia on Wednesday. So a multi-day severe weather event. Nick, Viv, back to you.
All right, thanks so much, Carl. 58 million people in that severe weather threat tomorrow. And of course, if you've been watching the Weather Channel for any length of time over the past few years, you know the Weather Channel's been out in the field to help warn people about tornadoes and to show their power and destruction.
And this year, that's right. The ingredients are still coming together for life-threatening storms to fire up throughout the day today. We're keeping you ahead of them.
We're standing right where that massive tornado rolled through Mayflower late yesterday. We're just north of Little Rock. I'm meteorologist Mike Seidel, and we'll come back and show you some of the horrific damage this twister caused. Coming up on Weather Center Live.
Baxter Spring, Kansas, hard hit by a tornado racing through this weekend. Today, a day of recovery after significant damage. I'm meteorologist Mike Bettis. I'll have a report straight ahead.
And good morning to you. Waking up on the West Coast, it is 9 o'clock for you.
And it's noon for us here at the Weather Channel headquarters in Atlanta. It's the central time zone, though, that has our attention today after 16 people were killed by violent tornadoes in 3 states.
And there is a threat of more strong storms today. We'll get the specific timing on those in just a moment.
14 of those deaths in Arkansas. You're looking at video from hard-hit Valonia, north of Little Rock. Now, today, we know the Arkansas National Guard is helping residents of this town, as well as the city of Mayflower, which was also very badly damaged.
Sounded like a freight train going through. I mean, the things were banging on the door, and I mean, the pressure differential, I mean, your ears are popping, and everything else. I mean, it's, I don't know, it's wild. 30 seconds maybe. I mean, about that long, and then it was done.
That was just one of the terrifying descriptions of what those residents saw, heard, and felt in those moments last night.
And of course, we have teams out in the worst of the worst damage. We'll check in with Mike Seidel in Mayflower, Arkansas in just a few moments. And Mike Bettis is with the tornado track team in Baxter Springs, Kansas, which also experienced damage, and we'll get an update from them as well. But we want to start with who's in the danger zone for today. More storms. This system is just as violent, still holding together. So give us more information on how this system will move east, Carl.
Yeah, Viv, a lot of the same parameters are in place today. We've got very strong mid-level winds coming in over top of an unstable low-level atmosphere, plenty of warm and humid air, and some colder air aloft. And so we think storms will bubble up into this environment where the winds are changing in terms of speed and direction with height, and that's likely to lead to rotating storms. So here are the Torcon values for this afternoon, looking at a 7 out of 10 in northeast Louisiana and western Mississippi. That's way up there, folks. 6 out of 10 in northern Alabama, and looking at a 5 out of 10 in Iowa, and a pretty large area of potential severe weather, but the greatest threat really centered on parts of Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Arkansas. And notice the storms that are firing this morning. Now, we are not seeing severe weather right yet. There are some cells that are beginning to go now in northeast Louisiana. We'll want to keep a very close eye on those. And we've had a lot of heavy rain south of Nashville, 3 to 4 inches of rain so far here. Flash flood warning going until 1:30 in the afternoon just south of Nashville, Maury, Williamson County. Also flash flood warning to the west there and along I-40, Hickman, Lewis, and Perry County right through the lunch hour. There's a look at what's triggering all of this, the upper level low that is not moving very quickly. Once again, bringing those strong mid-level winds in. There's the upper low. Here's the strong mid-level wind that's coming up and across the region, and that's going to be a problem for the next couple of days. A lot of warm and humid air in place here through the south. There's that low-level jet we talked about, and again, the colder air aloft coming in with the jet stream oriented the way that it is. So the severe weather threat across the Mid-South today will continue for the next couple of days and into the southeast tomorrow and Wednesday, and we'll have more on that coming up a little bit later on in the show. Nick, Viv, back to you.
All right, thanks very much, Carl. Well, you know, the state of Arkansas took the brunt of the damage from yesterday's storms. The town of Mayflower was especially hard hit.
Yeah, the town essentially locked down today, allowing only emergency and rescue workers in. But our own Mike Seidel is right outside. Mike, tell us what you're seeing.
It was just after 7:30 last night here in Mayflower when this twister rolled across Interstate 40. Behind me, that's where the town is. We couldn't get in this morning. They've locked that down. You can see some of the commercial buildings. The one right along the interstate is just now a mangled mess of steel beams. We're at an RV store where there were 70 RVs parked before the tornado rolled through here, and this is where 3 of them ended up. Kind of wrapped around the billboard like the billboard was a giant magnet. I've never seen anything like that before. Here's another one on its side, and they're just all over the place. In fact, the owner thinks about 50 of those were blown into the woods into bits and pieces. The death toll, at least 14 here in Arkansas. After it hit here, the next town was Valonia, a town that was hit by an EF2 that killed 4 just 3 years ago. The weather today, much, much better. It's more stable. No threat of any severe storms here in the metro Little Rock area. Again, north of Little Rock, here in Mayflower, Valonia, the 2 hardest hit towns, as this twister will be rated at least an EF3, if not an EF4. We'll get the official word later on today from the National Weather Service. Back to you.
A long road of recovery for the state of Arkansas. Now, along the Oklahoma-Kansas border, hundreds of homes were damaged and destroyed, and 25 people were hurt in one town alone.
And that town, Baxter Springs, Kansas, where we find meteorologist Mike Bettis. Mike?
Governor Sam Brownback has declared a disaster emergency here in Baxter Springs, Kansas, and there's good reason why. Tornado coming through yesterday, and this is the result. You can see this bike shop has been damaged, and roughly a dozen or so custom motorcycles in there are buried under the rubble. This is just one of those buildings. Connected to this is a bowling alley. Significant roof damage. The front facade has come off, and you can see, though, even bowling balls still sitting there on the racks, but they're in there trying to do some recovery if they can, just to recover anything they might be able to salvage there from the bowling alley. Next to the bowling alley, the roller rink, and you've got to see how this was just flattened by the tornado as it came from the south to the north, and this rink now just a pile of rubble at this point. Pretty indicative of some of the worst hit damage here right along Military Avenue in downtown Baxter Springs. We have damage on the other side of the road as well. Home that had been flipped over, a lot of trees that have been snapped, and debris is just kind of strewn everywhere about here. So a lot of cleanup to be done. About 3/4 of the town has been knocked out of power, and so they're doing a fine job. A lot of power crews here trying to restore power as quickly as they can. About 80 to 90 homes and businesses total were damaged, and 25 people reported injured by this tornado. But with all this damage, luckily, happy to report, no fatalities here in Baxter Springs. That's the very latest here from Southeast Kansas. I'm meteorologist Mike Bettis. Back to you.
Just amazing to see that destruction in the daylight. So Mike's team is on the move now.
That is right. This is our tornado track team, and they're headed to Nashville, Tennessee. We'll keep you updated on their movement. To tracking storms like the ones we saw just yesterday and could see again today, expertise makes all the difference.
Our storm tracker Jim Cantori reports today from NOAA's Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma.
Hey guys, I want to take you into the inner core of the NOAA Storm Prediction Center here. This is pretty much where it all happens, all the way from the outlooks that stretch anywhere from 4 to 8 days, right down to the current weather watches, some of which you will see today. It all starts with the lead forecaster. This is Rich Thompson here. Look at all the toys he's got available to him. But the final word on watches and also the coordination with the National Weather Service offices, the local offices, is done right in through here. Also, the risks, moderate risk, high risk, slight risk. Rich makes all those decisions. Over here, we've got the Meso desk. This is Chris Broyles working on some of those Meso discussions. If there's an area that may go under a watch or may not go under a watch, that's going to come from Chris, all right? There can be, at times, as much as a half a dozen or more of these Meso discussions on areas, if you will, and of course you need an assistant. So that's what Roger Edwards is doing today. He is the assistant, but he's also a lead forecaster here at the SPC. Other desks here off to my left, there's going to be your left because we're going to swing around this way, would be the outlook going out through 4 to 8 days, and the fire weather desk, which will be occupied a little bit later on. I cannot thank the Storm Prediction Center enough for letting us in their home and letting us certainly see what they do and do so well here. We are all in this together, and we are in it to save lives. And the beginning of that certainly starts right here. Guys, back to you.
So we are, Jim. We're all together in weather, that's for sure. Here's a look at the area that we're watching today now. For severe weather, what's going on at this hour? The current radar does show some pretty intense storms from western into central Tennessee. None of these have prompted severe weather warnings, though. However, there is a flash flood warning near the Nashville area. We've had very heavy rain. We've even had reports of some water rescues in the area because grounds are saturated, and you could see these heavy downpours flowing right over the same area, so that could lead to some localized flooding. Please be careful here and watch out for rising waters. Now, the area that we're watching for the potential for severe storms is right here over northeastern Louisiana and the western parts of Mississippi. So we're watching this area closely as well. Nick?
Well, severe storms like the ones we saw yesterday and could see today are dramatic and can be devastating to local communities. Today, we're hearing from those in especially hard-hit Arkansas.
Sound like a freight train going through. I mean, the things were banging on the door, and I mean, the pressure differential. I mean, your ears are popping and everything else.
All right. It's coming down the highway heading to Mayflower, and then all of a sudden it just got black, started flipping on the opposite side of the highway, ended up on the other side of the highway. Didn't think it was that close, and it just hit all of a sudden. Felt like a lifetime.
Guys, y'all need light?
I mean, I actually seen it forming over the lake. I could see it actually developing. We barely got down there, and then it slammed the basement door, and then we could hear crackling, and I said, maybe it's tearing stuff up. But luckily we made it through.
And we came out and found the trees down and the roof's gone.
You know, I saw some of the biggest trees just turned upside down, and literally the houses picked up instead of flat cars.
We're missing the dressers. Luckily, we had enough warning that we could get down in our hidey hole, and we were sitting down there, and it went right over the top of us. Came out and total destruction.
No doubt we'll be hearing more stories like this here in the days to come.
Unfortunately, we are talking about the potential for more tornadoes, and we're here tracking them for you to keep you safe and ahead of the storms. So please keep it tuned right here throughout the afternoon.
Near one of the hardest hit areas, Mayflower, just northwest of Little Rock. Mike?
We're standing right where that massive twister came rolling through parts of Arkansas yesterday, touching down in 4 states, and it was on the ground potentially for as long as 2 hours. We'll get the official word from the National Weather Service later today when they first issue their preliminary report on their damage survey. But you can see what we're surveying here, just a pile of rubble, mangled steel, vehicles, large trucks, and we're at an RV store, and they're all over the place. Most of those were blown into the woods. Here's one back here, and we got the story, the backstory on this one. Someone bought this just a few days ago, wrote a check for $118,000, and there it sits, a total loss. At least 14 were killed by these twisters here in Arkansas. After here in Mayflower, the next stop, the next town down the line was Valonia, a town synonymous with damage and death. They were hit by an EF2 just 3 years ago when 4 were killed. The weather today is much, much better. It's much more stable out here. There is no more threat of severe weather. Now it's the long and arduous cleanup that gets underway. The cleanup that's going to last for weeks, if not months, and trying to get the power restored. As of this morning, nearly 20,000 customers here in Arkansas still without electricity. Back to you.
Thanks, Mike. Such incredible destruction. You know, Arkansas wasn't the only state hit with this outbreak of severe storms.
Yeah, our own Mike Bettis is in Baxter Springs, Kansas, where there were dozens of homes that were damaged and or destroyed.
Baxter Springs, Kansas, taking a direct hit, we believe, from a tornado. Started off to the south and rolled its way north through town. A lot of debris and damage you can see here. Damage to homes, damage to power poles, damage to buildings. A lot of debris that's thrown off to the west. You see trees that have been uprooted, tree trunks that have been snapped and twisted about. More debris and power poles that are now leaning off to the northwest. And then you have this roller rink here where it was actually pushed and flattened off to the north. Shows that erratic nature of the twisting motion of a tornado. Not everything is laying down in the same direction. It's west or it's northwest or it's north or then it's maybe even northeast. This National Weather Service survey team from Springfield, Missouri will be on hand to confirm that this was indeed a tornado, and they'll put a rating on how high were the wind speeds, how long did it track, just how wide was the tornado. We'll find out all that information later today, but a significant hit from a tornado right here in Baxter Springs, an area very familiar to tornadoes. It was just up the street in Joplin, hit by a devastating EF5 tornado just 3 years ago, so this area is no stranger to violent weather this time of year. The good news is today the weather is significantly calmer, blue skies overhead, temperatures should be warm, and a day for recovery, getting power restored to the residents of Baxter Springs, Kansas. I'm meteorologist Mike Bettis. Back to you.
Thanks so much, Mike. You know, we have all your bases covered on this latest severe storm outbreak.
The lower Mississippi and Tennessee valleys is set squarely in the path of these storms now. We're tracking the likelihood of several tornadoes as we progress through the afternoon.
Plus, a big cool down shakes off the potent storms as they go east. How long does it go? Just ahead.
And a mixed bag of weather stretches well into your work week. Severe weather update, and storm specialist Carl Parker is standing by with bated breath, watching the severe weather developing, all of the ingredients coming together even as we speak, Carl.
Yeah, Viv, and we have some new updated Torcon values from our severe weather expert, Dr. Greg Forbes, and they are way up there. We are talking about an 8 out of 10 now in Jackson, Mississippi, and also an 8 out of 10 in Huntsville, Alabama. That is an 80% chance of tornadoes within a 50-mile radius. Notice the timing there, going through the afternoon and through late tonight, then a 5 out of 10 in Nashville through 8 p.m. So this is a very serious tornado threat. Now really is the time to start thinking about what you might need to do to prepare for these storms. And in fact, there are people that are thinking, excuse me, along those lines already. In fact, some schools in central Mississippi have been closed because of this threat. So here's a look at a current severe thunderstorm warning that is now in western parts of Mississippi. That is for Chico and Sunflower, Washington counties until 12 p.m. This cell is moving along at 60 miles per hour. That's an important point because they're going to move very quickly. And along with that fast movement, you don't have a lot of time to react. The threat with this cell is half-dollar size hail and also 60-mile-per-hour wind. Farther to the south along I-20, another cell here worth watching. Notice that it's got a little bit of curvature to it right in there, so that may be a developing supercell now just south of I-20. We're going to want to keep a very close eye on that, and we're going to have much more on all of this coming up in just a few minutes.